So look, you might remember this, babe. I'm talking to my girl Melissa off camera. In the live stream conversation I had with Wiener, Captain Wiener, the guy in the Wiener costume. I said to him that a lot of us, our sense of self-esteem is relative to our brothers and sisters in our own family. I've known a few different women who feel ugly their whole lives or feel unattractive. It's really actually about attractive, not ugly. They feel unattractive because they have, say, an older sister who's more attractive than them. That's who they compare themselves to. They come from a family with some of those dynamics. And I said, in some ways, being on the internet, for some people, for some personality types, kind of opens up this endless series of brothers and sisters you compete with. You feel like you're in competition with, I don't know, somebody you idolize on Instagram or YouTube or something else. Now, intellectually, I think this really cuts both ways. One of my ex-girlfriends, who's going to remain nameless, she was much more intelligent than her own sister. And she grew up in a family with just two girls, just two daughters. She was definitely a lot more intelligent than her own mom, too. I knew her mom. And she really felt she was extraordinarily bright and that she didn't have to work hard to know anything or, I don't know, win an argument or she was arrogant. I mean, it's a kind of intellectual arrogance. Mm-hmm. And then she fell in love with me, which is not an overstatement. I mean, it was a really serious, deep, long-term relationship. And, she feels stupid all the time. She feels ignorant all the time. She starts fights with me and disputes and debates. And even if she thinks it's something she has some expertise in, after she's talked to me for a couple of minutes, she starts, even if I'm just asking questions, even if I'm using some Socratic method or something, she starts to realize she doesn't know what she's talking about. And I mean, I used to say with her in that relationship, I said, it's really important to cultivate an appreciation for being wrong. When you discover that you're wrong, that's when you're learning something new. Mm-hmm. And something else. So interestingly, there's a new podcast up or new video up from Bite Size Vegan, Emily. And Emily talks about something that's quite close to nihilist philosophy. She talks about the importance of maintaining a sense of doubt and a sense of uncertainty at all times, even as you build up expertise. Like, even though you've had the conversation about why I became vegan or why meat eaters, even though you've had that 100 times, you've done a certain level of research and footnotes, you've given it again and again, that you maintain a kind of doubt. I think the first philosopher to talk about that, there's a famous work called the Novum Organon by Francis Bacon. And part of his idea in maintaining your doubt, even about things you know, was that the most productive frame of mind is simultaneously playful and serious. Which is an interesting concept of philosophy. What's the best way to learn? So Melissa's doing some philosophy of education right now. But I think that's actually quite close to some ideas we have now in practical. Like, why do teachers play games with students? Why do we ask people to get up and dance? I mean, it's interesting. You're trying to get a state of engagement and, I hesitate to say critical thinking, but you're trying to get a state of mind that is both playful and serious. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I can remember kind of philosophizing about that a bit with my ex-girlfriend, who I'm alluding to here. But it really ground her down. She really found it denigrating. She was really used to being right all the time. In her own family, even in her circle of friends. The circle of friends she came through high school and university with and stayed in touch with to some extent. She wasn't super cloistered in that circle of friends. But I can remember she'd tell me anecdotes about meeting up with them. And, they were smoking cigarettes and they threw their cigarette butts into the storm drain. And she just went off on a rant about how you don't even realize and you don't care that, here, the storm drains go directly into Lake Ontario. They don't go through a sewage treatment. You're directly polluting the lake. And, you're so full of yourselves with your left-wing ideology and your theoretical commitment to environmentalism, but you don't care enough to carry your cigarette ashes and your cigarette butts and put them in a garbage can. Like, she was that kind of character, which you can already see what I liked about her. I mean, to me, that is endearing. You care enough to pitch a fit and throw a tantrum that way. But I mean, that was what she was used to being. She was used to being the person who knew her stuff and the person who was always right and the person who was smarter than the members of her own family. And she started hanging around with me, and it really ground her down. So in this relationship, okay. So my current girlfriend, she watched like over 100 videos of mine on YouTube before she met me in real life. Probably more than 500. So she already had a taste for the Eisel Mazard monologue. She enjoys listening to my ideas and my thoughts, as I present them. Now before you must realize that's not true of any of my other girlfriends. Anyone else who fell in love with me, it was mostly based on appearance. It was mostly based on some kind of evolved sense of compatibility or magnetism. We have, that weird sense of attraction and compatibility, which is not the same as appearance in my book, but, based on that kind of thing. And then only after they get to know me or start falling in love with me, they find out that I can monologue for 2 hours straight on a long list, an almost infinite list of topics. And, but you realize other women would not have first encountered me as a conversationalist and then encountered me as a man. They fell in love with the man and then found out who I was intellectually and my, what it's like to have a conversation with me. So Melissa is extraordinary that way, that she picked me first as a YouTube personality and then fell in love with me as a man. But it's interesting to note. I mean, there were been some times when Melissa was just ground down by the Eisel Mazard experience. So, none of these examples, I think this example really is telling, but this doesn't reveal anything too terribly personal. We were once in a hotel room, and we were talking about rap music. So again, it's not always such a serious discussion. And you stated an opinion about Tupac, so Tupac Shakur, a rapper. And I just said to you, what song are you thinking of? But Tupac, what do you have in mind?
I remember it was the new Lil B album.
Yeah. I'm leaving out some of the I'm not going to tell the whole story. It just takes too long. But you got totally demoralized. You totally lost faith in your own argument. And you just sat down on the bed. You said, forget it. Forget I said anything about Tupac or Poe. Yeah. So I didn't ignore this. I really took the time to unpack it. I lay down on the bed. I said, no, come on, let's talk. Like, what's going on? I can see you're really upset about this. And I don't think you're upset about Tupac. I don't think you're upset about the particular issue in rap music. And the point was, again, this is why I'm leaving out details. The details of who said what about rap music don't matter. But the point was, I mean, you were just tired of being wrong. You were tired that no matter what the topic of conversation was, even if we were going to talk about rap music, I would have greater depth of knowledge and more accurate memory. And that and again, you've got to realize these conversations, I'm not playing to win. It's not a debate. It's not about, one person trumping another or what have you, Now, sorry, the other thing, there's truer words than ever been spoken. The ex-girlfriend I alluded to whom I said so many times, you should learn to be delighted by discovering that you're wrong. When you find that you're wrong, then you really know you're learning something. She would say back to me, she said, yeah, but that's only true of you because you're not wrong all the time. She said, for you, that's true because you're only wrong once in a while. So for you, it's special. For you, it's exciting. You're happy to find out that you're wrong. No, I don't think that's true. I think it is a cultivated frame of mind. But you can see she was worn down by this, And look, I mean, what I'm about to say, it could be true of a gay relationship. It could be true of two men who are together or something. But, I mean, we work out at the gym. I lift more weight than Melissa. I'm always going to lift more weight than Melissa. Unless I'm horribly disabled in a car accident or something, if I, whatever, But, with, ceteris paribus, whichever pronunciation you want here. All things being equal, I'm always going to lift more weight than you. There's this sense where, when I'm going to say this, if you're working in tandem, if you're rowing the boat together, where one of you is always, pulling more water, pulling more weight than the other, right? So look, I'm going to say what I think the positive way out of this is, and then I don't know. You can say what you think it is. Maybe we haven't found it yet. I mean, I think it still is. I think it's still attention to the relationship when you get tired. I think when you're well rested and alert, then you have no problem with this. You're basically happy to be with someone. I mean, she does say to me also all the time. It comes up all the time. Melissa grew up in a context where the people around her were just talking about football and baseball, and where the level and caliber of conversation. Right? I think that was even true in university. You weren't surrounded by brilliant intellectuals at university who were pushing on stuff. She does really appreciate being in the company of at least one person all the time who's really talking about interesting and substantive things and talking about them in a way that shows that he cares. But it's not some abstract debating club for me. I really care about these issues. I break down weeping talking about politics history pretty often. I mean, I don't want to. I could keep a calendar, but when we talk about massacres and wars and stuff from history, I get emotional. I get choked up talking to them. I weep for half a second, but I get choked up talking about this stuff.
Yeah, like you say, I appreciate the challenge, and to me, it challenges me to improve my knowledge in areas that I am.
Right. Okay. So I think I'm going to digress. I think the challenge is a separate but related issue, right? Because so one part of the challenge, I think this is what ground down my ex-girlfriend. One part of the challenge is, how do you know what you think you know, what you already are certain of, right? And it may be that it's something you read about or a teacher said to you in high school and you never really questioned. It might be something you picked up from television without questioning. It might be something your parents always told you, but whether it's historical and political knowledge or something else, now I have a YouTube video that's up from ages ago where I stated my position on abortion, and I remember she was just completely horrified at my position on abortion, right? So by the way, I want to live in a tolerant society, and I basically think, on a practical level, we absolutely have to allow people to make the decision to have abortions. However, I do not regard a fetus as equivalent to having your appendix removed or having your tonsils removed. I do not regard it as an inert, unliving, or non-sentient piece of tissue. I think there's this ridiculous discourse of trying to pretend it's just like any other surgery. I remember she was completely, horrified and furious at me, over that, because she came from a kind of, and again, I might have been earlier than high school. She adopted a kind of dogmatic feminist position that getting an abortion, her position was that getting an abortion was no different from clipping your fingernails or cutting your hair. This was like unliving tissue on the body being sloughed off. Now, anyone who's actually been through having an abortion themselves, I don't think anyone, okay, all right, takes all sorts. Some people, it would be extraordinary for someone to actually go through the experience and feel that way about it, or just look at the reality of what a fetus is at 3 months or something, and to come to that conclusion. But nevertheless, so one form of challenge is challenging you about things you already know. And then the other form of challenge is making you aware of things you don't know, you never even considered learning, and saying, well, you got 2 months. In the next 2 months, how much do you learn about this? So, I mean, Melissa had probably never given any thought. I mean, you could correct me wrong. The history and politics of China. I mean, it's just, I don't think it ever occurred to you to study the history and politics of China. And now, step by step, over a year and a half, China's more and more of a part of your life. And there are a lot of things about it that are just fascinating. It's like, well, and it was quite a dramatic, discussion we had where I really said to you, look, in the next couple of months, if you're going to learn one thing to put you on a footing for the rest of your life, I think starting with the ancient Greeks, doing Aristotle and Socrates. So again, that's like nobody in your life, none of her parents, none of her professors, none of her boyfriends or brothers. It's true, you have her brother's like 7 years older than her. Nobody's ever said to you, hey, look, for who you are, too. I mean, this isn't advice for everyone in the world. Specifically who you are and your interests, ethically, politically, and so on. You should really start on zero. So those are two types of challenge. And they never go away, right? I think that's a mark of a good relationship. I think of being a good boyfriend or good partner, and I think it's part of a good girlfriend too, that you're challenged in both those ways. How do you know what you really know? And again, linking back to my earlier video on this, someone doesn't have to be that intellectual well-versed, especially on either of those, point one or point two, to really be saying to you, okay, like I understand you're telling me this, but how do you know that? Where's it? Just to be asking questions, probing into how did those assumptions get formed? Where does this come from? Where does your certainty on this come from?
Yeah, I just want to say one thing. I mean, I also appreciate that it would be better if you had somebody who is challenging you intellectually, and there aren't very many topics about which I can challenge you intellectually. And I remember you telling me when I expressed that at some point in the past, you said not even your professors have made you feel like your ideas were being challenged, or many of them you felt like you were more knowledgeable about a topic than they were, actually, when you were in one of their classes. So anyway, I just want to reflect also on the loneliness of your end of the the equation.
So that that's the kind of thing I don't say of myself on YouTube. People complain already that on my YouTube channel I'm boasting, but yes, very, very often, in the vast majority of cases, I'm in a situation where I know more than the professor about the topic of the particular class. I'm not making a universal statement. I know more about everything. But I'm not going to get into it, but you're going to have to use your imagination that the particular classes I'm taking on the particular, and that was one of the reasons I wanted to go more into language. In a language class, I'm not going to know more than the language teacher. But in these other areas, that is true. And you're right, the professors are not in a position to challenge me.
I think the one thing that might be able to teach you something is music. But music requires, having a stable enough home to have instruments, and that doesn't seem to be the situation.
Melissa knows music. I don't know music. I've never driven a car in my life. She may well teach me how to drive a car. There are some other things. Yeah. And no. I mean, it brings up another interesting digression. The same guy, Daniel, wrote back to me asking about loneliness, and you talk about loneliness that way also. For me now, at age 40, I'm not lonely that way. I'm really equipped to ask and answer, these questions of myself. And I don't have a big bookshelf off camera, but you can even see that on the bookshelf in terms of how I'm challenging myself. And the challenge is partly just in filling in gaps in my own knowledge that I'm aware of, and it's partly creative. So like my current engagement with Socrates is ultimately about writing original stories. My current engagement with Chinese, I want to write more children's stories in Chinese. I want to write more vegan propaganda in Chinese. I want to read politics in Chinese. So, after you get over a certain point, for me at least, as an autodidact, I don't really need that. But look, that could be a whole separate video. Something I used to say back when I was at the University of Toronto, there's a difference between being lonely and being alone. And my situation at University of Toronto, my situation at University of Victoria, even my situation at Cambridge University, England, I was not lonely. I was alone, And, as you know, a whole different topic for a different video, but this is one of the things I like about Chinese culture, is at least you can kind of have colleagues and so on.
Yes,
and in
I
white,
really
right. So she's seeing this already in the difference between how you relate to Chinese people and white people at university right now.
Much more of a collective attitude, much more of working together.
But also, I find Chinese people do not have the thing most white people have. I like to say it's, who do you think you are? Don't you know who I think I am? Where they feel stupid because I'm smart. They don't want to feel judged. They don't want to feel stupid. They don't want to talk to someone who's better than them. Right.
They're happy to talk to you even if you are more knowledgeable on a subject.
Right. And Melissa is right now in a university class, I'll just call it that, where you are more knowledgeable and experienced and advanced and have more acumen than the other students in that class.
Yeah.
And, I think in many cultures, not white English-speaking Western culture, but in many cultures, like, oh, this person is strong, they can help me to be strong. This person is smart, they can help me to be smart. This person is wise, they can help me be wise. And in white Western English-speaking culture, it's like, no. Insulate yourself separate yourself from anyone who's superior to you, so you don't feel challenged. You don't feel. Yeah. So I think that's a big difference.
Right. And I know that's not the position you want to be in. You want to be challenged.
Right.
It's what you crave.
To
hear something different than what you already know.
Right.
I think it's natural.
Right.
And the other thing I wanted to say is, I guess the other topic to bring up is comparisons between people. Your ex-girlfriend felt that she compared herself to you, and in the same way I do that as well, and we spend so much time together that I think I kind of in my mind think that I'm less intelligent, that I'm not really an intelligent person at all because I spend so much time with you. But when I'm in another context, like lately I've taken this class and I'm like, wow, I mean, I also don't want to boast, but
right.
I am
you see yourself
more
in a different
than the people in the
different
class.
comparative context,
I'm
right?
able to, I'm just quicker and able
right.
to remember important items, and
you also have more experience and knowledge in this particular field. But right.
And I wonder if it has to do with like classroom setting too. Like I've really been trained to perform well in the classroom, and
some other people haven't.
Yeah, or
Okay, so look, this is my approach to solving this problem, and maybe it doesn't work. Oh, right. So look, guys. I mean, really briefly, if you think my ex-wife is an exception to this, my ex-wife had a PhD, you would be wrong. I mean, I could do a whole separate video talking about my relationship with her, but in my earlier video I just said these issues have come up again and again and again for each and every girlfriend I've had. So including my ex-wife with a PhD, but including even my ex-girlfriend who was Laotian. She was from Laos, grew up in Laos in a totally different culture, totally different educational background. But she was really used to being the smartest person in the room. And, most of the time there in Laos she was. She was an extraordinary person in various ways. But I also am an extraordinary person in various ways. So it was a real big change for her to be in the room with me. Instead of the other schlemiels she dated before and after me. Anyway, shout out to her. Good luck to her wherever she is right now. But look, this is my proposed solution. I try to take the question of learning and even the question of knowledge, you can put it that broadly, out of the quantitative category and put it in the kind of creative category. Now, what I mean by this is, if you paint a picture, if you and your husband both paint a picture, if you and your wife both paint a picture, if you as a couple both paint a picture, the point is not in a quantitative sense who has the best picture, who has the biggest picture, who has the most detail or something, right? There's some sense in which, you wouldn't be painting at all if you didn't think there's some value in me painting this picture and it being mine, right? Now, Melissa, your study of Aristotle, I'm just going to simplify, she's read a whole bunch of the ancient Greeks lately. I think it is true, like quantitatively, your study is not as good as mine. If you think about it that way. Think about it as a competition. But that's not the point, right? The point is your interpretation of the politics of Aristotle, or the politics of Athens, a little bit more really, is yours. It's your creative challenge. It's your creative experience. And in a very real sense, we create out of ignorance. And Melissa does raise different questions about, ancient Greece, Athens, origins of democracy, political philosophy of Aristotle. She raises different questions than I would age. Pardon me. Telling slip there. She raises different questions than I would raise. Partly because I have more background and what have you. And of course, I'm dealing with this stuff in a bit more of a nuanced, analytical way because of who I am and what I bring to it. But to try to get both parties to realize this is something valuable for you because it's yours and it reflects your knowledge and your ignorance and your progress. And I don't think that's true of everything. Some tasks or some forms of learning are so meaningless that that's not true. Okay, getting a driver's license maybe. Just objectively, quantitatively, you got to be able to drive good, and that's it. There's some check mark you got to reach. There's some standard you're trying to live up to, and there's no role for creativity. But in these more meaningful things, to in that sense personalize it and view it more qualitatively and creatively as part of who you are. And of part of who you're becoming, because all of these experiences change you. Melissa has made a lot of progress in a year and a half. Yeah. I think you are. I think you are a different person with a deeper appreciation for life. I can put it that simply. And, broadening just your awareness of the history of planet Earth to include China, the semi-continent of China. Like, whoa, you know. And, you know, even, sorry, I mean, she had been to Europe before she met me. But the difference between being someone who's only kind of walked the streets of Detroit and really getting some depth of experience as an adult in Europe and so on, you know, there are changes that come there too.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
So that's it, guys. That's my modest proposal. And, you know, I think many of you watching this video, we saw it in the comments in response to the last video. If you think this is a problem, keep in mind that it's a wonderful problem to have. Because we had so many people writing in saying they've never dated anyone who read books about politics or history. They never dated anyone who cared about anything more than designer clothes or some shallow, terrible stuff. And that they wish they could find someone they had a connection with on these deeper levels. And it's a wonderful problem to have.